Welcome back. Now, South Africa has unique tax laws and estate planning regulations pertaining to wealth transfers, which could see individuals lose a significant portion of this wealth if not managed adequately. Ettienne Bezuidenhout, wealth manager at Alexforbes, joins us with more insight and tips on how to go about navigating wealth transfers in a smart way. Ettienne, thanks for your time this afternoon. And as we get started, just take us through the importance, or rather the reasoning why wealth planning and management is important.
Hi, good afternoon, yeah, and thanks for having me on the show. It's you see, you mentioned there that South Africa has quite intricate tax laws and estate planning situations, and if one navigates these successfully, the transfer of wealth to the next generation can be a lot more successful and not be bogged down in all of these taxes, laws, and simply a waste of time in certain processes and bureaucracies that need to happen. Unfortunately, the winding up of an estate in South Africa at the moment does take a lot of time. And the moment there's time spent, that means there's a cost involved.
Yeah.
But there are ways in making sure you can streamline that process quite significantly.
And talk to me about some of the common mistakes that people are making. Is it just a fact that perhaps they don't know that there are ways to mitigate the risks when it comes to the tax implications?
Yes, I think a lack of knowledge is definitely a big problem. It's not common knowledge, and people's circumstances differ, and therefore you need to plan according to your own circumstances. But one of the biggest problems we find is people just don't have a will set up correctly. And even if they do have a will, sometimes it doesn't explain things clearly enough, which muddles the waters. And the moment something is not very clear, that means it's open for attack by other family members or other people that feel they should be beneficiaries and potentially are not. So the first step would be when you to draft a will to make it very explicit in terms of what you would like to do. Now, obviously, you can't just rule from the grave, so there are limitations to what you can do. So in that instance, I would definitely advise just getting a professional to help you and assist you with the wording of the will and what you can and can't do. But having a very clear view of what your wishes are is step one.
And some of the other steps, let's talk about some of the other things you can do to make sure that the wealth is distributed accordingly and the way you intended it to be distributed.
All right, so definitely the use of different products as part of your investment and estate planning is a very helpful way of managing this whole process. For instance, if you invest money into a unit trust structure, it forms part of your estate, which is distributed according to your will. That means the executor takes charge of this process, and it only pays out when the will is wound up. However, if you invest money into an endowment structure, you nominate direct beneficiaries. They just need a death certificate along with a claim of what you wanted the money to done, and it pays directly to the beneficiaries. So it's a much quicker process, just as a simple example. There are other ways to mitigate tax in terms of estate duty as well.
Okay.
I mean, you can utilize trusts during your career when you start investing money and when you build up your wealth. You can also utilize something that is known as Section 10C of the Income Tax Act, whereby you can invest money into retirement funding products. And after retirement, you can actually get a tax-free income for a certain amount of time. And you can also keep in mind all the money that is invested in retirement funding products, once it stays there, it's outside of your estate. There's no estate duty, no executor involvement. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to transfer to beneficiaries. It's a very clean and neat and tax-efficient way of transferring wealth to the next generation.
And in terms of trends, when it comes to the products that you've just mentioned, where are you perhaps seeing more people put away their money?
Yeah, remember, it's where you put your money is not simply based on your estate planning requirements. It's also during your lifetime what would be the best suited for you. So it's a bit of a mix. If you look at estate planning in isolation, yes, certain products may have certain advantages. But if you look at the same products during your lifetime, there may be tax disadvantages at certain points or liquidity constraints. So it's not as clear-cut a case as to say, oh, this is what you should be doing. It actually does depend on every specific individual circumstances, what they have, what they're drawing down, what their income needs and requirements are, what their liquidity requirements in terms of capital withdrawals could be over the next while. And then, of course, the all-important subject, how can they best distribute whatever remains to the next generation without giving too much money away to the taxman? Nobody really likes doing that.
That's right. And, we spoke about, this knowledge deficit that we are seeing, and I guess the role of financial planners also becoming important, right?
And I cannot stress enough how important that statement is that you've made. Financial advisors historically is always seen as people that invest your money or, sell you a policy. And I think that is a misnomer to a large extent, and it should change. We should be more educators than actual just selling policies and provision of products. Because if you can educate the people according to what their needs are and what the universe out there does offer for them in terms of product sets, in terms of tax benefits, in terms of all these kind of things, suddenly the whole population, the base knowledge lifts, and that means everything will become cleaner, smoother for the end user. Not just a case of selling people product. Advisors do have a very, very big responsibility in educating their clients, and clients conversely also have a very big responsibility to ask advisors for this investment advice and estate planning advice, and then actually act on it. We also experience the other side of the coin where good advice is provided, but not what the client wants to hear, so they do the opposite.
And just on that, right, we talk about, giving advice to people and people actually using it, but we are in a country that has a low savings culture and, doesn't take or is not as financially illiterate. How are we preparing citizens as well as, the people that are going to inherit this, the heirs, to be more, more responsible with the wealth?
One of the ways that I feel is very successful, especially if you're talking about a wealth transfer to the next generation, I can answer that point first, is involving the heirs in the planning beforehand. It's like someone who wins the lotto. They don't really know what to do with that money. And suddenly there's a lot of pressure on them. There's a lot of information they need to process at a very short amount of time. Normally that leads to bad decision making. Okay. If the heirs are involved and they know exactly, okay, this is the plan, this is the long-term future, this is the thinking of the person providing this wealth through to this next generation, they understand the plan, they can seamlessly fit into it and just carry on with it. That is the way to do things properly. Because if the heirs now want to change the original plan, that comes at a cost, whether that be capital gains tax or product termination fees or whatever the case may be. So there's a definite huge advantage in involving the heirs in pre-death planning, if I can put it as bluntly as that. Coming back to your other point of financial illiteracy in South Africa, that is a huge concern. It's a massive problem. And unfortunately, we have a zero savings culture, to put it very bluntly. But I mean, that factor is also exacerbated by the fact that there's such a high unemployment rate in South Africa. People are struggling. So it's easy to say you should save more. But first you need to buy food, you need to provide for your kids, all that sort of thing. So education is very important, but I think a kickstart to the economy, provision of more jobs and putting more money into people's hands would be a very good start. On the education part, I think that a lot of these things, why not make it a subject at school? Teach kids the basics so that when they come out and they speak to an expert, at least they have a basic format of understanding of what the different products are. And they cannot be taken for a ride like a lot of these pyramid scheme guys are doing with some investors and some individuals.
Ettienne, thanks so much for your time and sharing those insights. That was Wealth Manager at Alexforbes, Ettienne Bezuidenhout.